Hello there everyone, this is going to be my full Obi Wan Kenobi episode 1 video. There's a whole bunch of Easter eggs for Star Wars, for everything that happened during the prequels, as well as what's happening in the future with Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy. There's even a little bit of stuff going on with Grogu now in this part of the timeline, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, I'll be doing videos for all the episodes. Be sure to subscribe to get them all.
Hello there, Star Wars Celebration!
Careful for spoilers from everything from episode 1 if you haven't seen it yet. We'll just start at the beginning of the episode and work our way through shot by shot, talking about Easter eggs and WTF moments as we go along. But they actually started episode 1 with a big recap of everything that happened to Obi Wan Kenobi in his story with Darth Vader Anakin Skywalker during the prequels, ending with the very end of Revenge of the Sith as they all go their separate ways. The actual opening scene began with a special new Obi Wan Kenobi theme song over the title, and one of the big things with the music for the series is they did get a separate composer who's not John Williams to come back and do music for the entire episodes, but John Williams himself came back specifically just to do one piece of music, and it was actually the theme song for Obi-Wan himself, because he said technically in the original trilogy, he didn't actually create a separate special theme song just for Alec Guinness's Obi Wan Kenobi. The actual opening scene of the episode is a shot on course onto the Jedi Temple with a bunch of younglings as Order 66 is going down. They're all in the middle of training, and if it wasn't clear, they want to show you that this young girl in training here at the temple during Order 66 was a young version of Reva, who eventually does get twisted to the dark side and becomes an Inquisitor as an adult. The name of the Jedi Master that's in the middle of training them is called Velti. She winds up dying to protect them, as you see all the other clone troopers going around killing everyone around the rest of the temple. They don't actually show you the scene of Anakin Skywalker killing that group of younglings, but somewhere in the background he is killing a bunch of young kids, just like these ones that are escaping. R.I.P. younglings. I think this is also meant to set up the idea of what happened to some of the Inquisitors too, because they give you a little bit of backstory, but they don't really start talking about that till episode 2, so I'll talk more about them when they show up in the episode. Even though some of them probably do get away, it sounds like Reva winds up being turned to the dark side because she eventually does become an Inquisitor. So that means that some of these other children might have become Inquisitors too as part of these forces in present day. But as they run away, you can hear the Emperor's voice repeating on all the clone troopers' comms saying, "Execute Order 66" over and over again. Then they jump to 10 years later, which is meant to be the present day of the series, where most of the series takes place on the streets of Tatooine. I believe this town is meant to be Anchorhead. We actually went there a couple times during Book of Boba Fett. There were some deleted scenes there during A New Hope. Most of the rest of the episode on Tatooine takes place in and around Anchorhead, so that's why I think that this is the village at the beginning of the episode. They don't waste any time in showing you the Jedi Inquisitors and what their mission is. I tried to find a special name for the Inquisitor's ship, but all the references to it are just calling it the Inquisitor's transport. But it's meant to be evocative of later ships like Kylo Ren's Black Ship. They show you the Grand Inquisitor, Reva, who they're calling the third sister, and the fifth brother played by Sun Kang. Most of you remember Sun Kang from all the Fast and Furious movies. He's not very recognizable in all that makeup. Most of these characters, like all the Inquisitor characters, you probably saw during Star Wars Rebels at some point. Like the Grand Inquisitor character actually showed up during Clone Wars and during Rebels. There's a lot that happens with their characters in the next couple of episodes. I'll wait till my episode 2 video to talk about what happens to him, because you know what happens to some of these characters. Like some of them do show up much later in the timeline, so it's a little bit easier to tell who might die, who might not die based on that. But the whole idea with the Inquisitors is they basically used to be Jedi or Jedi trainees or Padawans who were turned to the dark side and are now going around hunting people for the Emperor and for Darth Vader. Their home base is called the Fortress Inquisitorius. It showed up during Star Wars Rebels. It shows up during Jedi Fallen Order. You go there a couple times during a couple different series. It was located on a different moon, also inside the Mustafar system. So like Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar was pretty close by to where the Inquisitors were, but they weren't on the same planet. And there's this whole thing that they set up with the Reva character, like she's meant to be this hardcore, ambitious character who wants to win more favor with the Emperor and with Darth Vader. Throughout the episode, there are a couple different times when the other Inquisitors take her to task for being too ambitious. They're kind of trying to set up the idea that evil will always wind up defeating itself, like the same way that Darth Vader eventually wound up defeating the Emperor. It wasn't Luke Skywalker. Evil winds up killing evil. It's meant to dovetail with that whole conversation that the Grand Inquisitor has when he's trying to find that other rogue Jedi character. The Jedi can't help themselves. They have to help everyone. It's all about the Jedi Code. But like I said, it's meant to dovetail with the idea that Reva is also going after the other Inquisitors because she's more ambitious. So the Inquisitors are also kind of hunting themselves, so to speak. You see a couple of their Force abilities, they whip out a couple of their lightsabers. They all have hilts that are kind of crazy, meant to be kind of like the Grand Inquisitor's lightsaber hilt. I think that he's one of the only ones with a double-bladed lightsaber, though. Most of that is taken from Star Wars Rebels, even though he doesn't have like the crazy-looking Sith eyes from Star Wars Rebels. Like that might have something to do with what happens to him later in the series or later in the timeline. They use this ironic scene where the Grand Inquisitor winds up revealing this rogue Jedi through him trying to help the other person by stopping the knife from hitting his body using the Force. And as he escapes, the whole talk about him being the smaller fish and them looking for bigger quarry is all about Obi Wan Kenobi, obviously. He is the bigger fish, the more famous Jedi that Darth Vader has been looking for the last 10 years unsuccessfully. But the way they talk about it, the other Inquisitors, like the regular ones, don't really care about finding him. They don't think that it's even possible. Like, we failed, we're not going to find him, he's hidden somewhere too deeply. The hunt for Obi-Wan is all about Reva trying to win favor with the Emperor. Then the actual Obi Wan Kenobi reveal during the series, the scene of him working on the line of that giant sand creature as they exhume it for all the different parts, is meant to be an ironic twist on what you just saw. The rogue Jedi wound up revealing himself because he was compelled to help someone else. His altruism wound up revealing him, whereas Obi-Wan kind of does the opposite and he chooses to hide his abilities by not helping the person being bullied by the foreman. Obviously, we know Obi-Wan is eventually going to use his abilities, he's eventually going to help people, he is a good character, but thankfully by the end of the episode, he does agree to go find Leia. And even though the next part of this episode is all about his relationship with Luke and with Lars Owen and what's going on in this part of the timeline on Tatooine around the Owen Lars farmstead, most of this early part of the series is actually about young Leia's character. That's probably one of the biggest surprises because it's the first time we've ever actually seen her in live action this young before. But they reveal for the last 10 years he's just been living out of this cave with his meager belongings. He hasn't built his hut yet that you see during A New Hope. That probably happens later in the timeline. Maybe we'll see a teaser for that at the end of the series. Like, okay, I'll finally build myself an actual home now. He's got an R2 unit serving as a watchdog for him, just alerting him to anyone's presence. There's a Jawa that it seems like he's been trading with for the last several years called Tika. They make this big joke about the Jawas just stealing anything that's not bolted down and then selling it back to him as if they found it. Like, oh, here's the thing that you found missing. And one of the big Easter eggs here is actually the T-16 model that you see Luke Skywalker playing with during A New Hope when he's talking to C-3PO and R2-D2. Turns out that was built by Obi Wan Kenobi and given to him as a 10th birthday present. Even though later in the episode you see Owen Lars try to throw it back in his face like, don't give him any ideas. Too late for that. Seems like he really wants to be a pod racer someday. They do have this joke about him sitting on top of their hut, playing pod racer, like he's making all these motions wearing goggles, just like Anakin Skywalker was during Phantom Menace. Like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, because during the episodes, they also remark about how Leia is acting just like Padme would act. They set up that whole running storyline with the other Jedi appearing on Tatooine, obviously talking about the rogue Jedi that the Inquisitors were chasing down. Here's some belongings that we stole from his ship. Giving Obi-Wan probably the most PTSD of all PTSD flashbacks. Obi-Wan Kenobi also literally calls for Qui-Gon Jinn's help, making me think that there's going to be a Qui-Gon Jinn Easter egg or a cameo scene before the end of the series where he shows up to teach him how to become a Force Ghost, because they still have to do that. That's a big part of the timeline.
Obi-Wan, have you done as I asked? Have you trained the boy?
Master Qui-Gon, how are you here?
All the nightmares that you see him have, the different scenes, are meant to be the most WTF moments from each of the prequel movies, all the way back to Phantom Menace. Like, you even see Anakin as a child. When he leaves the T-16 model behind for Luke, the other rogue Jedi tries to give him this big call to action, and it takes a couple times in the episode because each time someone tells him that he needs to help out, he says, no, I'm not going to do anything. The funny thing, too, is that when he tells the other Jedi to go out into the sand and bury his lightsaber so that they won't find it, he literally has done that himself, because at the end of the episode, he walks out to the middle of the desert to dig up his old lightsaber hilt and Anakin Skywalker's old lightsaber hilt, which he'll eventually give to Luke Skywalker. The other huge reveal here to the other rogue Jedi is that he's started going by the name Ben these past several years. Like, he isn't using the name Obi Wan Kenobi. He's trying to encourage other people to just call him Ben.
Obi Wan Kenobi. Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
Most of these first couple of episodes, though, are meant to show you how he is able to find hope again. But when you see him first in episode 1 here, the way that Ewan McGregor talks about him, he said he's meant to be at his lowest point. Like, things cannot get worse for him. The series is meant to show how he was able to find hope again, thus the title of episode 4, A New Hope. That's why right after this scene, they also show you what was happening with young Leia on Alderaan, because she is the other new hope for the galaxy. There's a lot of double meanings with the titles of Star Wars movies, but A New Hope, yes, Luke Skywalker is the main character of that film, but the whole idea is that Leia is meant to be the other hope. Like Yoda said, there is another. Leia is the other new hope for everyone in the galaxy if something were to happen to Luke Skywalker. She's meant to have just as much potential in the Force, even though she doesn't wind up training quite as much as Luke does. Like, she does some training, as they explain later in the timeline, but she leaves her training, even though they call her master later in the timeline. And throughout the episode, she does seem super precocious, like they want to make her seem as much like Padme as possible, and every bit as sassy and as resourceful as you remember Leia being during the original trilogy.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
No reward is worth this.
But even though a lot of the things that she does, like kind of reading people, so to speak, make it seem like she's unconsciously using the Force, I think a lot of that is just meant to be her own natural ability in just reading people like a normal person would, like a normal profiler would. Just being able to look at people and read their body language and learn everything about them just based on the way that they act. The woman that walks in here is called Breha Organa. She's her adopted mother, Bail Organa's wife. We've never seen a ton of footage of her before, but obviously because this is a series, we have a bunch of episodes, they have way more time to spend with the characters. All these scenes are just meant to show you what life was like for her growing up on Alderaan, what her relationships were with Bail Organa, her adoptive father, with her mother, how she actually did love them, how she cared about the people of Alderaan, so that later in the timeline, when you're forced to watch her see as the planet blows up, you have way more context for her reaction now. Her little droid is called Lola. Supposedly they're going to be selling that as a toy pretty soon. Pretty much anything in Star Wars that's capable of being sold as a toy will be sold as a toy. When she starts spotting all the transports and the ships leaving the planet, they just want to show you how intelligent she is at this young age and how she was able to eventually become the youngest senator in the history of the galaxy. She mentions a Tri-Wing, an Aquilan Ranger, casino ship, medical freighter. A lot of these ships would be ships that wound up building the Rebellion's fleet. Also, the guards that come with her mother to try and find her are wearing helmets that look exactly like helmets you see running around the Rebellion's bases. It's just meant to show you how important Bail Organa and Leia eventually would become in the formation of the Rebellion itself. A lot of the forces from Alderaan wound up making up the body of the Rebellion. She also mentions Mersan Pirates. That's a group that was mostly active during the Clone Wars that the Separatists supported. There are several references during the series to the actual Clone Wars because we literally just got done experiencing those in the timeline of the movies. Even though this is meant to be 10 years later, it relies heavily upon what happened during Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars. Her mother mentions a Glorag. That's a new creature that's not from the canon before, so I'm assuming it's a wild tree animal that just lives on the planet. You notice that Leia's clothing is very 70s inspired, similar to the designs and the color patterns you see her wearing when she gets all of her clothing changes during the original trilogy, but also she's got some epic bun-themed hair, just like she has the cinnamon bun-looking hair during A New Hope. Her mother has it too, so I think the idea is that it's just a common fashion amongst the people of Alderaan. Her mother makes all kinds of jokes about her becoming a senator quickly. Like I said, Leia was the youngest senator in the history of the galaxy. They use all these scenes at their party here at the main palace to kind of show you what her personality was like and why she thought the way that she did during the original trilogy, why she fought so hard for common people, and to kind of show you what was going on with the other side of things, because there's this whole idea that the Emperor wound up overthrowing the Republic to name himself Emperor, create the Empire, the whole rise of the Empire itself, but he wasn't able to do that all by himself. Even though he was a Sith Lord, he required the help of many, many powerful people around the galaxy, many powerful families that supported him. That's why they show you the sister's family who kind of make it seem like they really only care about making money, they're not really worried about what happens to the common people, and her son, or their son, is just like them. With Bail Organa and Leia kind of taking them both to task separately, like there's a lot of other issues that we need to be worried about in the Senate, and Leia basically telling the other little kid that he needs to pay attention to what's really going on. They also reveal C-3PO, and remember, it is the actual C-3PO, and R2-D2 is around here somewhere too, because they became Bail Organa's property at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and he only had C-3PO's memory wiped, meaning that R2-D2, as per canon, remembers everything from the prequels.
Have the protocol droid's mind wiped.
What?
It's also meant to establish how the two of them wound up on Leia's ship during Rogue One and during A New Hope. When she's arguing with her cousin, she talks about Jacko beasts. Those are Force-sensitive animals that live in the Outer Rim icy environments. Then they jump back to Obi Wan Kenobi and they have that big scene with his confrontation with Owen Lars. And remember, it's Joel Edgerton. He also played Owen Lars during Revenge of the Sith so many years ago, if you don't remember. All the same actors from this Obi Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker scene on Owen Lars' farmstead is meant to be the exact same actors, except for the baby, obviously. A lot of their argument about what Luke should and should not be doing about staying hidden, just keeping a normal life, is meant to reference the conversation that Obi Wan Kenobi has with him later in the timeline, Alec Guinness's version, about why his uncle hated the idea of Obi Wan Kenobi the Jedi, Force sensitives in general, mostly because he felt like it led to too much trouble. Yes, they do have that funny scene of him sassing Obi Wan Kenobi, throwing Anakin Skywalker in his face.
When the time comes, he must be trained.
Like you trained his father?
But they also want to use this scene to redeem Owen Lars' character and just explain why it was he hated these Force sensitives so much. Because the Inquisitors basically run roughshod, almost wind up killing him, like Reva almost kills him, if not for the other Inquisitors stopping her. To his credit, though, he does not sell Obi Wan Kenobi out, but as he says, he did it for Luke Skywalker's benefit, not for Obi Wan Kenobi, because eventually they would have tortured him, and he felt like Obi Wan Kenobi would have given up the information about Luke and Leia eventually. The funny thing with Reva overstepping over and over here, like she's just going way over the line at every turn, makes it seem like Darth Vader might wind up being the one to eventually kill her. It kind of reminded me of that funny scene from Rogue One where where Orson Krennic's character starts talking to Darth Vader, and Darth Vader tells him, be careful not to choke on your ambitions, as he literally force chokes the life out of him. Basically telling Krennic not to get too big for his britches, and it sounds like the same thing might wind up happening to Reva's character. Like, be careful not to be too ambitious, because nobody is going to replace me in the eyes of the Emperor. A lot of times, Darth Vader wanted to kill all the Force Sensitives' knowledge of Force Sensitives so that the Emperor could not train another replacement for him and just get rid of him. Also, they kind of already did this plot during Jedi Fallen Order. One of the Inquisitors, who's a main character, winds up kind of turning good and sparing Cal Kestis, and Darth Vader then kills her for that. So either way, it seems like Reva is in some danger. Later, Bail Organa starts talking to her about his plans when he was a child, like, I wanted to do all these great things. He talks about Cthulhu, which sounds like another distant land. The Purrgil that he talks about, though, are those giant space whales that you see at the end of Star Wars Rebels that can enter hyperspace naturally. He also references her eventually becoming a senator at a very young age, just kind of setting up her later in the timeline. It all winds up coming to pass. They also use the episode to show you how much he actually did care about her as his adopted daughter. They have one of their first big cameo scenes from Flea of Red Hot Chili Peppers, who plays the lead kidnapper. One of the other kidnappers is also a Falleen, who's the same race as Prince Zizur. They reveal that they're working for Reva, the Inquisitor, who's trying to root out Obi Wan Kenobi because he is the bigger prey, the bigger fish that she was talking about earlier, trying to win more favor from the Emperor. But the whole thing here is that they don't know anything about her true identity. Reva and all the Inquisitors and the kidnappers just think that they're stealing somebody who is from a powerful family, and they have a friend, Obi Wan Kenobi, that will help them out, and that's how they're going to get them. They don't know anything about Leia's true identity. I also think that's meant to be a bit of a joke about the canon, like how unlikely it was that all these characters were able to keep their true identities secret up to the events of the original trilogy. But then Bail Organa gives Obi Wan Kenobi his next big call to action, which he again refuses, like he literally has to show up in person to tell him, get up off your ass, go save this girl, you know how important she is. And the way that he explains it is that they can't get somebody else like a bounty hunter, like even Boba Fett they can't hire, because they can't tell him who she really is, because that'll wind up revealing their secret. They can't make it public in the Senate and create this big thing, because that'll also draw too much attention to her true identity. And when he says that Leia is just as important as Luke Skywalker is, it's meant to be another reference to them both being A New Hope. Like both of the two of them are twins, they have an equal chance of saving the galaxy. When they're locking her up in their little cell inside the ship, that's meant to be evocative of the scene of her being put in her cell in the Death Star. And they do try to show her trying to rescue herself, which he does several times throughout the series. As I said, they reference his talk earlier to the other rogue Jedi about burying his lightsaber in the sand when he unveils his lightsaber hilt as well as Anakin Skywalker's old lightsaber hilt. And he finally agrees to Bail Organa's demands that he go find and save Leia. Also, it probably didn't help seeing the dead body of that rogue Jedi that he failed to help earlier. If it wasn't clear, it seemed like some townspeople got together and poisoned him or somehow got the better of him, and that's how he died. It wasn't meant to be the Inquisitors that killed him because they'd already left the planet. Like I said, he's still kind of down in the dumps, so to speak. The rest of the episodes are meant to sort of give him the inspiration that there will be a new hope. There is new hope for the future, referencing the title of the episode 4 movie. They play a little of John Williams' classic Force theme song at the end of the episode when he reveals his lightsaber hilts. But then over the end credits, it's all meant to be brand new music that they composed for the series. If you spotted any other Easter eggs or references during the episode that I didn't talk about during the video, just write them below in the comments. What'll happen though is that my full episode 2 video will post next later today that should be up in the next couple of hours, so make sure you enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everyone click here for my full Obi Wan Kenobi Episode 2 video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that, and click here for all my Obi Wan Kenobi trailer videos. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.